Now we're going to try a sphere shaded with charcoal. So we've got different kinds of charcoal here. Let me kind of prep out my stuff, and everybody should have something similar to this in their bags. A sharpener, some chunky charcoal, some vine charcoal, and one of the kneaded erasers. You might have to take your kneaded eraser out of its plastic sleeve. And to work with the kneaded eraser, because it's going to get dirty and all these black spots on here, right? This is a self-cleaning eraser. So you warm it up in your hands and you start to stretch, and look how it's getting lighter gray. See how, oh, it's very rubbery. Kind of a little bit like Play-Doh, right? Can be kind of a little addicting at times. Meditative maybe, but this is a great way that it self-cleans to get rid of some of the dust, and this allows us to kind of mold what we need shape-wise to erase edges or to pick things up. So the kneaded eraser is going to be super helpful. So unpackage that and start to get it warm in your hands so it's more pliable. Okay, so I'm going to have that off to the side. This is vine charcoal, and it literally is what it says. It's coming from Plant Life. It is a vine that has been burnt at a certain temperature, and so it's very lightweight, but it also creates very light, easily erasable lines. So think of this as like an H pencil, right? We're going to sketch with it to get our picture started. We're also going to use it for some very pale values. All right, from there we have our square sticks, and the square sticks are compressed charcoal. So they are a little bit heavier, and they are burned at a different temperature, and they are crunched and compressed into this specific shape. They're molded this way. Okay, so it's not naturally coming from a vine and being left as a vine. It is now being compressed into a form, and this then reacts in a darker manner. It's even coming off of my fingers a little bit more. It will be our darker, think of B values, 6Bs, 2Bs, 4Bs. Okay, so this will be your darker values. For detail stuff, and later on we'll need probably more details than maybe right now, we have white charcoal in a pencil form, okay? And we have that compressed black charcoal again in a detail pencil. Keeping in mind this is very 6B-like, and so you can utilize the metal sharpener any side to kind of slowly sharpen to get sort of a point back on these, okay? And then we have our ever helpful blending stump. All right, that'll kind of help us move things around. So we have one last little item that probably is in your bag. If not, it's in the room. These are sanding blocks. And so if you need to sharpen something or erase the dirt that's of the charcoal that's on your blending stump, clean it off, and you want something to go on lighter, then you can shave across here and it will sharpen it. You can also, if you need to bring this to a point, you can shave and sharpen it on here as well to get the kind of point that you want to draw with. All right, so now that we have our supplies, we have our tape roll again. We've worked with this before. I'm going to take the vine charcoal and very, very lightly kind of draw my circle on the inside. Okay, now let me show you how light this stuff is. It's like, see how I can kind of, we're starting to kind of eliminate a little bit. I can even come in here and almost erase it, right? So I'm going to kind of lighten this up. See how I lighten it up a little bit further? So it's sort of a ghost of an image, because we want to then be able to control the darkness that we put onto the paper, right? Keeping in with what we had in the previous video, we're going to say our light source is coming from up here, okay? And that means we'll have our sort of small oval of highlight up here in the top. And then directly opposite of that will be our shadow again. So I'm going to find my halfway point where my axis touches down, and I'm going to kind of bring this over here. We'll create our little oval shadow. All right, and then I'll erase what I don't need. Okay, so we have our shadow spot. All right, one last thing that's going to come with this project that's a little bit newer that we didn't do in the first round is we're going to create the feeling of a wall and a table space. So the table can't be necessarily lower than the shadow. We need the table to appear to be above the shadow line somewhere. And so I'm using a pencil and a ruler to kind of draw myself a line where the table and the wall kind of meet. Okay, so you can utilize a pencil to kind of lightly lay that out. All right, so now let's look at some of the light value first, because we need to create that reflected light at the bottom. So I'm going to give that little sliver of reflected light, and I'm going to come back with this and kind of literally soften it a little bit. I might even find I might need to pick it up a little bit more. Turn my tool to a fresh side. See how I'm kind of picking some of that up. I'm going to flip over to the other side. There we go. Because this is supposed to represent something that's a lighter value. I think I might even come in here with my kneaded eraser. And this is what's one of the nice things about this is I can flatten this out and I can kind of press it down like silly putty. See how it's kind of lightened from here to there, right? I'm going to kind of press it down and lighten it a little bit more because we want more of this HB feel down there. I'm sorry, H feel. Okay, so I'm going to lighten this just a little bit more. So this is kind of a nice, cool effect that this little guy can have. And see how it's getting dark? So if it's getting dark, you can clean it up, right? Just squish it away and your dark dust is gone. All right, so now we're moving into the dark shadow, right? So we have that coarse shadow space down here where we usually had worked with 4B pencils. So I'm going to come in here and follow my curve again. Now notice how I'm using sort of the flat side. I'm going to, yes, you can lighten your hand pressure while using this block. See how I'm just kind of, I pushed a little harder there, right, around that edge. And now I'm kind of lessening my hand pressure just a little bit as I work up the side. Okay, now I might do a little bit of, I'm going to take one of my little vine charcoal sticks and I'm going to snap him even smaller. I know, looks like a violation, doesn't it? Okay, and blow a little bit of my dust away, just a smidge. All right, I don't want it to smear behind. One of the cool things, just like your stick, your other charcoal stick can do is if I lay this on its flat side, okay, not on its point, on its flat side, I can begin to kind of merge these two kinds of charcoals together. Now I know that when I begin to smudge a bit with the vine charcoal, it's going to soften and kind of dissipate a little bit. Now, look over here. I got a little carried away, didn't I? It's a little too dark over there, but let's check out what happens when we start playing with some of the blending stuff. Okay, now it's backing off a little bit. All right, we know that we need to have a little bit of value on the other side. I'm gonna smooth this. Try and keep it as crisp along the edges as I can. Notice how I'm still going in a circle? Okay, something in that rounded oval feel. Now I know up here I need to still have, this is kind of my allotment for my oval space. So that means some of this stuff needs to fill in over here. Now I can lift some more up by using a fresh side of my blending stump. There we go. Blend in a little bit. Still following the rounded curve of that oval that I originated. Start blending down into the heart of the sphere a little bit more. Now the tricky part with blending stems is the edges. Many times people like smear too much at the edge and then it looks like a bad focused camera image. So be careful as you get closer to the edge that you don't smear. I kind of angle to make sure my point is focused on the edge as it goes around. Okay, so we're starting to get some changes from dark to medium to light. Now I still have the issue up here where I'm a little too dark and over here where I'm a little too bright. So I'm going to bring some of my dirt that's already on my blending stump up over here to balance things out a smidge. And then I'm lightening up. I might even change to my other side so I can make sure things stay lighter. See how it's kind of picking up some of that. All right, I can also come back over here because this side over here is too dark. So I need to lessen a little bit over here. Okay, got a little too heavy-handed. This is the darker side, that's the lighter side. So good use of the kneaded eraser lets us lift. All right, we talked about this earlier. I could dab with it, I could pull things, I can make things get into small areas. So now I'm going to come back and kind of see what I can do to smooth out and blend a little softness into that side so it still remains a little lighter. All right, I'm going to come back and do a little bit of edging to clean my edges a little bit more. Okay. Now, I see where I can kind of tweak a little bit with my pencil tool, okay? So here's my charcoal pencil, and I'm going to come up against this edge just a little bit more to get a finer edge over here. Now, again, my hand pressure changed substantially from here to there when I did that. So I'm going to fill in some of that. All right. Might even come over here and clean that up a little bit more. Clean my edge over here. There we go. Okay. I might even, because I kind of blew some of my dust around, I want to make sure that that guy, look at that, gets a little bit brighter and whiter. So I might take some of my dirt and dust around there and see how nice and reflective that white light is. All right, so now we have our illumination and sort of our vine charcoal played the lights, and then we kind of mixed it into where we had our dark charcoal at, right? Okay, then we have our light reflection. So now we're back to down here in the shadow zone as wanting that 6B really dark. So since it's going to be a crisp edge up against my sphere, I'm going to come in with my charcoal pencil. But I might take, again, this is one of the things where you can take a paper towel, you can take an extra paper, scrap paper. I have a drawer in the room with some scrap paper where you can put that down to kind of protect what you have already done. All right, so I'm going to follow the curve first. And this pencil helps me get into those tight details. And I'm lightening my hand pressure. See how I'm getting a little bit lighter out here? I'm getting a little lighter. Okay, now I might turn over and work with just the chunkier one now that I'm away from the detailed edge, because we still want to have a feeling that we're dark, right? And we have to fade, because in pencils we would have gone from 4B and then finishing off with 2B at the very end. So we would have our 6B, 4B, 2B until we reach the end of the shadow. Well, there's not much change going on there, so I'm going to use a little bit more pressure. You can always add more. It is a little trickier pulling stuff up. Okay, so now I'm going to utilize my blending stump out here on the edges and the end here where things are happening, and see if I need to add any more or lift anything. Let's see, I might need to lift just a little bit. We'll see. And once we establish our table value, that'll help us out a little bit more too. Okay. So I'm going to tap because I have a lot of built up stuff on my my drawing right now. I'm going to tap this over onto a scrap piece of paper. All right, to kind of get rid of some of the extra. All right, I got rid of some of my extra leftover crumbles. Okay. So I'm trying to lift some of this up a little bit with some fresh sides, you can see this or not, of my blending stump. But I might have to clean off my blending stump a little bit. So here I'm coming back to my sanding stump. And I'll try and clean some of this off. Give a fresh edge, so I can then pull and lift a little bit more off of the ends. I'm going to fuzz the ends. We fuzz the ends in the pencil version. Because typically at the edge of a shadow, there's a little bit of fuzz. I do think I'm still just a hair dark on this shadow. So I think I'm going to take my my kneaded eraser, and I'm going to kind of just pull inwards a little bit. There we go. You can kind of see it started to lighten a little bit more there. Make it a little bit lighter down here. So I have more light, more medium light, dark, and darkest. Okay, so now we have to look at what's coming above and what's coming below, because we have a wall and we have a table space to consider. All right, so when it comes to the wall and the table, we need to consider what we want to use as far as a value. Up here, since we've got this is very light up here, you could go darker if you wanted to with a wall. It's a subtle change between here and here. So I'm going to do the floor area first. So I'm going to take, this is very dark. That means the table has to be lighter. Logic, right? Now, down here on the table space, we've talked about this before, we kind of need to work horizontally. Okay, so I'm dragging my Vine charcoal horizontally because tables lay flat, and flat is horizontal. Come up around here. Try and keep my line even over there. Okay. Now again, you could blend with your blending stump. This is one of those deals where some people really like using the softness of a tissue. So it's up to you. Some people find that the blending stump can be a bit harsh and streaky. So sometimes working with some small circles down below, look at that, can work to soften. Now the difficulty you have to watch out for are edges. Okay, so, see, I went over the edge, but I'm about ready to do this section up here. So I can work to fix some of that when I start working with my upper area. That's going to be our wall. Now this side, since we're receiving a lot of light over here, we need to manage this side as being a little bit lighter in some values. Okay, and as we start to get this direction, we may want to have a little bit of a darker, or I hate to say darker because it sounds like you're going to go super dark, but you may want to have a little bit more of a medium value as we go around the corner and on the back side of the sphere. Okay, I might add a little bit more right there. All right, so my sides of my table, this is a little bit brighter for a table, and then it does get a little bit more medium on this side, right? Because we're getting away from the light because our light source is over there. All right, clean that edge up a little bit. All right, so now in the upper deck, we can do something similar. We can play with a light source up here, and we can either go vertical or horizontal in the top part. Okay, so I'm going to start first by kind of laying a little bit of this edge in, because this is a horizontal line. All right, and then I'm going to start to go more vertical. If I can get my fingernails to work. There we go. Okay, I'm going to kind of follow the curve of the sphere. I'll kind of come into that a little bit later with my blending stump here. So I'm going to start to give this. Now, this is naturally lighter than the compressed charcoal, right? So that means at some point, I can start to very lightly, and this is super light, I'm barely touching. Let me bring it down into the light a little bit more. So I'm barely adding a little bit of that compressed charcoal to our value. Okay, so this side is getting darker, but it's blending right now. A little bit of the compressed and a little bit of the vine together, and then eventually it's just going to be the charcoal because we're getting away from the light. Okay, I don't think we can see too much more than that. All right, so again, you could go in with this, or you could go in with your blending stump. I think I'm going to do my blending stump a little bit in the beginning here, just to kind of make sure we've sealed off this line so that this line is a little bit more crisp. I'm going to go do my vertical as well. Now, you know, when we're doing this, we're pulling a little bit of it back off because it has to go somewhere. We're smudging it, but we're also picking it up, right? It's getting picked up off of the paper and put on to the blending stump right there. All right, so now I'm going to kind of come in here and follow the crispness of the edge of the sphere best I can. I want to try and avoid this white halo. Can you see that white halo? Because I was carefully avoiding it. So I want to avoid that white halo. We don't want that to stay. But we want there to be a visible difference. A visible, clean difference between the background and your sphere. So I'm edging right along it. All right. even though the rest of my visual play on this wall is going to be vertical. And I'm getting darker. You see how it's starting to change from over here? It's no longer the vine charcoal kind of a look. Now it's getting richer. I'm going to do my edging here because I don't want a white halo along my table edge either. And now I go back to vertical. Okay, so we have this change that happened. We have an understanding in our background that this side of the page is lighter because the light's coming from over here, okay? And there are surfaces, whether they're flat or vertical, are slowly changing and getting a little richer when they come this way, okay? So there you have it. Look for any areas where you might have little white halos that shouldn't be there, okay? And if there's one that shouldn't be there, we want to try and clean them up. And then if you're doing this at home, put like just a scrap piece of paper over the top of this so you can travel back with it. Then when we get into the classroom, I'll show you how to spray to fix this so that dust doesn't just keep falling and falling and falling off of it. And then you'll stand it up like we normally do, either on the easel or it might be at home or something. If you're at home doing this, stand it up so we can get a nice picture of it well lit.